All right, Sanjay Sehgal or Siegel. Well, what's your preference? Because I think you might have a little fun with your name. Tell me a little bit about how you pronounce your last name.
Well, the one I like the most is Seagal, because that allows me to say that I'm a better looking cousin of Steven Seagal. But the right one is Sehgal. So
The right one is Sehgal. Okay. Well, for anybody listening in, Sanjay has quite a resume. It's obviously been posted, but he is currently the chairman and CEO of MSys Technologies. You've spoken throughout the world, and I get the privilege of having a few minutes to talk with you about something that's really near and dear to my heart, Sanjay, and that is about culture. I have been privileged as an organization to win 25 culture awards, some of it early on. I think we just stumbled into, we had a great culture. Now I'm incredibly intentional about it because I see the power of a great culture and the influence it can have of what we deliver into the marketplace, right? Happy people, you get happy clients. So with that, let's just jump right in. And since you are a resident expert on culture, can you sort of help me? What are things that you would say define a culture?
See, I won't call myself a resident expert in culture, but we all influence the culture around us through the values and, through the systems, values, and, and beliefs that we bring. And I think that's so, I do have, or I have developed a unique set of those over time through my involvement in various businesses and also through my involvement in, I would say, meditation techniques or meditation practices. So they have, I would say, a lot to do with, what I believe or what I do. And to me, culture is really, really what you do, how you do it, right? And I think that's kind of what, the values are also the same, beliefs are also the same. And I think so that's kind of, to me, culture is that, right?
So can you just find, and because you have had so much exposure from being an entrepreneur, multiple businesses, and speaking around the country, how would you describe a healthy culture in business? Because again, you've seen so many, good and bad. But let's start off making sure that people are listening in, that maybe they're in alignment with you and me of what a healthy culture is.
Sure. To me, a healthy culture is the one which allows people to bring their best. Now, that is, again, even though as I'm saying it, I'm myself feeling it's a bit of cliche, getting the best out of people, allowing people to do their best. It's good, but it's cliched. To me, I would like to say at this stage now, best culture or the healthiest culture is the one which allows people to transform themselves to their better version. Not because for us to say that I'm getting best out of people, it means you're not allowing them to grow. To me, a best culture or the healthiest culture is which allows them to transform themselves to a better version.
Wow. Well, interesting enough, based on all the surveys and studies that are out there about engagement drives performance, right? You want them to be more engaged. Really interesting, because quite often companies do sort of, I'm going to say flatline or hold people back from being able to transform themselves. But what it did say in all of the studies is that people that grow will stay with you. And it's when they stop growing is when they start looking.
Wonderful. Yes.
So I could not be more in alignment with you there. Is let's help them grow, help them transform into the next level of success, or what we believe they're way more capable than they realize. So, all right, let's go to third question for me is, all right, what are the greatest mistakes that are being made in building a great culture, an amazing culture, not just a great one, an amazing culture?
No, I think I think the mistakes people are making, one is that in our effort to drive performance, most of the companies are creating a culture of fear. Sorry to say that. And I myself ran into some companies, and even among my clients. And I know, I mean, sometimes you know why a client is behaving the way they are behaving. I mean, which may not be the most optimum way for them to work out of even us as a client or us as a vendor. And you can see the culture that they are being driven by, right? So I get to see, across the aisle as well. So I feel the first mistake people are making is creating a culture of fear to drive performance, right? And then I think they're also not allowing people to help them grow. I mean, to allowing people to grow within their own roles, jobs, or the corporate ladder, or however they define it. And that also kind of people, after a certain amount of time, when they feel they cannot grow, they become really stagnant and they lose interest in their job. So lack of interest is driven by that, right? So
Yes.
like that, I think if you see, and then of course, the whole idea of, to me, if you can make them feel this company to be theirs as much as it is yours, I think you have a winner at hand.
Yeah, it's so interesting because that culture of fear of mistakes, fear of getting fired, fear of doing the wrong thing. One of my favorite sayings that I guess is a personal favorite of mine that I talked about is you need to fail forward.
Yes.
Expect failure to happen.
Yes.
Because if you fail, that means you are making an effort. There's obviously no intentionality to fail, typically in business, right? Especially by an employee, like they don't want to fail, but when they do, our reaction as leaders will determine that employee's ability to perform again. So if we react with, you're in trouble, why would you do that? And the why world being very confrontational, like, why? And can you imagine your hands on your hips as a why? Or parents, like, why did you do that? It takes them away from bringing their best. And I think you've already stated, and we're talking about transforming people, which means they're growing. You can't grow, and I know you know this, but you cannot grow unless you make mistakes,
Yes.
unless you are struggling, because growth comes through pain, and growth comes through challenges. So if you expect failure and allow people to move past it, that's when they transform.
Yes.
So we are so we could be new best friends. So all right, let me ask. It's interesting. I got to tell you a little history, Sanjay. I hired this woman, this is years and years ago, and I had won multiple, again, we've won over 25, I think we're at 29 right now, but and she came in, she goes, oh my gosh, I got to tell you, Case, I worked at my last company. The culture was toxic. It was horrible, but I was tasked by my CEO to win a culture award. She goes, do you know how many times we applied? She goes, we could never win it. She goes, because the culture was toxic, but he wanted to win it, and he didn't realize that he was the problem. So I want to pivot, because anybody listening, and let's just pretend you're working in a poor culture, right? Whether you're an executive, a leader, manager, whatever it might be. What can you do to assist in shaping the culture to be more positive? Do individual employees have power in shaping the culture? What are your thoughts on
that? See, I'm tempted to say that somebody says, what do I do if I come across toxic culture? I'll say run.
I almost want to say the same, but I'll have an opinion too. But yes, I agree with you.
But I think, like that example of, they say that the butterfly effect. I mean, we all have ability to make changes. We all have ability to create difference in the world we live in. And so I am a strong believer in that. And from taking cue from that, I would say that, you create a positive mindset in yourself, and that hopefully will impact everybody around you. If you are, let's say you are in a toxic culture environment at work, but you have a positive mindset, you have a growing mindset, you have a mindset of treating others with respect. So I think that is going to rub off others. You may not be able to change the entire company's culture, right? But you can at least influence people around you. And they will see, at least they will know what a good culture or what a good mindset means, or what a good mindset can do to you. And
Sure.
hopefully that propagates further up. I mean, like they say, the culture always, comes from the top, right?
Sure.
And I'm sure you heard of this very popular saying, the culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? I mean,
Right.
that's the famous one which we say in the management. And I think these two, if you see, I mean, the culture has to flow down from the top. So at times but I feel, and I have been party to that. I think there was a company that I worked with long time ago where the culture was not good, but I know I try to do my bit. And the department that I was managing, or I was given to manage eventually, that had a different culture from the rest of the company.
Mm.
So I was like a shield. I was like a shield to the folks who were in my department. And since, my department always performed better than the rest of the company. So I was kind of left alone to have my own culture, or have my own thing. And, we never fired anybody in that department. We never treated people kind of with fear and all that. And we always had, we all worked hard. We always worked together. We always were the best performing team in the company. And that, I think, kept people going. And people always had a career path that they knew where they can grow into.
Interesting, because I do believe, right, we're not victims to our circumstance unless we choose to be. But if you're in a
Yes.
really toxic culture, what can you do? You can control your department, like you just said, right? Your team. But ultimately, there's always a decision to make. Is where you work representative of who you want to be and who you are? I left, by the way, interesting is I worked in an environment that the culture was amazing, but the culture in the team was horrible.
Wow.
Really wild, right? So you go, okay, and if I can't control the team atmosphere, I have to leave, or I will become one with it, which means I will become that type of culture. And if it's toxic, be very cautious, because that can become you. So, all right, let's go to, do you think younger people or older people behave differently in culture today in companies? Because there's this big dispute, about the olders and the millennials, etc. What are your thoughts there?
I have been very fortunate that in that respect, that I am able to work with people across various generations with the same kind of flexibility and same kind of adaptability. I am very closely associated with an NGO called Heartfulness Institute, and I do a lot of work as part of that NGO with the young folks, with the Gen Z and millennials and all that. And so I have that fortune of working, I would say, across various generations. And there's a big difference. And it has been, I won't hold that against any generation. The same difference perhaps existed when we were younger. Our older folks perhaps treated us, oh, these guys feel privileged. These guys are like this. These guys are like that, right? And every generation brings with it its own set of things, right? So I think it's our lack of understanding of various age groups or various generations that prevents us from working with them than making or putting the onus on them. If people like me and you or others who are listening to this, if they can be empathetic to different generations, I think they can work with everybody, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of it, what people are looking for, I think you said something very interesting earlier: happiness, security. And happiness comes out of feeling secure, right? And I think that's, if you are able to create that kind of environment for them, I think you have a winner at hand. You can work with anybody.
Sure. Well, it's interesting, the younger generation, because I happen to employ millennials and every single one of the multiple generations. And what I'm finding is people are people. They want to feel valued, loved, and cared for. They want to feel like they make a difference and they have meaning. So I don't think that has changed. I think that it's been elevated, because when we think about the millennials, and they've been brought up from the 9/11 to Hurricane Katrina, and some of them really devastating times where they've experienced things that we may not have, that were traumatic, if you will. So I look at it under the filter of, they're just elevating our leadership. They're really forcing me to think through what is important. Because those young people, I'm laughing a little bit, Sanjay, because those young people are our children and we did it. Okay, so we got to be careful to say.
You're right. We can't blame others. We can't blame others.
Can't blame others. We did it. We own it. And so what did we do?
Yeah.
But what we did is we elevated them. We elevated their ability to say, I matter. And so we have to just really be that much more conscious, because when you've got the multiple generations, do you make them feel like they matter? Every single one of them. So anyway, all right. So I'm going to make a little, there's this new series out. I watched it and I heard you watched it, called We Crashed. Have you seen that with Adam Newman?
Of course.
All right,
One of
if
my-
anybody's listening in and you have not seen the series, stop this right now, go watch the series, then come back. We Crashed is by Adam Newman. The movie is about him and his life, about WeWork, and they named the movie We Crashed. There was a culture and we crashed, and I'm dying to ask you, would you say that was a healthy culture or not? And why? Because there was a culture for sure.
I think in my, I'll tell you before I comment on the culture, I'll tell you something interesting. When my son, obviously he's a new generation, he's a 25-year-old kid. When my son watched the first episode, and he says this guy is obnoxious, he was a criminal, guys like him should be put.
He said guys like him should be what?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you again. Yes, your
Guys
son said he should
like
be
him,
what?
put behind bars. And I argued with my son. I said, what crime did he commit? You tell me. He had a great idea. He's a great salesman. He was a great visionary, and he created a great company, and people gave him money. He didn't force anybody. He didn't twist anybody's arm to raise money, and people gave him money at high valuation. That's not his fault, right? So let's be clear. I think this guy was, if at all he was a victim, he was victim of circumstances, or victim of people who wanted to make money off of him rather than him victimizing others. I was a great fan of that character. Jared Leto, of course, a great actor. But Adam, I was a great fan of that man. And I think he's about to create another big startup very soon. I think if you're following him, you'll hear about that very soon. But now coming back to the culture, I felt the culture in that company was completely toxic. Sure. And I think that's what led to, in a way, when it actually crashed, it crashed because there was no foundation. To me, culture brings that foundation. What does culture do to the company is the foundation. Casey, you would have seen in my resume, I have done many startups.
Yes.
And early on, when I did my first startup, a mentor of mine told me, companies are a lot more resilient than you would think at this stage. You're building a small company, and the company is 10, 20, 30 employees, and you think, okay, well, if I don't raise next round of funding, it may crash. He said, if you build it right with the right culture, it will stay on forever, or for a very long time, even if you're not there. And I have built companies which are still around, even if I'm not there with the company, because the culture is that foundation. And that company crashed. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can. I'm sitting there. Go ahead.
A company crashed because the underlying culture was toxic. Go on and on. The guy was dictatorial. He let his family relations ruin a lot of things. And for him, fun mattered more than, people doing their job. And I think the way he treated people was not right. There was a culture of fear. We can go on and on. If you watch that, as you said, people should watch that serial before they can relate to what we're talking about. He did create a bad.
Interestingly, when I watched it, I went, oh my gosh, how do you attract people in this toxic culture? But he was able to, right? He wasn't always able to retain them. That was one key thing you have to look at. But the second is, hit the legacy. It crashed because there was no foundation. Then honestly, there was a foundation of fear, but there wasn't a foundation of love, value, etc. But what he was really good at was selling. And he sold a vision. And that's a whole
Yes.
nother day to talk about leadership and how you sell a vision to your team, but one that's plausible and how they matter in that culture. But anyway, that series, I have asked my leadership team to go watch it, to say, I want you to tell me what you think we should do and not do as a leadership team. And what was beautiful in that is the fact he was a visionary. He knew what he wanted and he was able to sell it. But the practical reality of why they crashed is they did not have a care for the people. And so I believe, I don't know if you watch me out on social, but I put out a little snippet. By the way, you'd have fun. Watch me on social, Sanjay. I do all kinds of things with animals too. You'll laugh at me. But this particular one that I put out was, if you want to know what your culture and how your culture is defined, this is the simplest way to do it. Ask your employees what they say about your company at the dinner table.
Mhm.
And that is who you are as an organization. And that is how your culture is defined, by what your employees are saying about the company. And it's a powerful thing to go, what do they say? And so anyway, very interesting concept. I would love to have you back. I don't know if you're willing to, because I want to get into work-life balance, because I think that's a hot topic in the market. But I'm very aware you're in India at 10:30, now 10:45, 11 o'clock at night. And I want to say just thank you for your time. But would you come back and do work-life balance with me?
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite topics. And I would love to tell people more about that. I mean, I have tried to maintain that, throughout my life. And I hope I have been successful at that. So I'd love to share that.
I would love to have you back. Well, but we have a few technical difficulties because of the time zone, et cetera, but I know such sage advice. And for those of you listening in, culture is your destiny. Culture defines your success long-term. And what's your intentionality in building an amazing culture? And be well aware, I think and this is where we'll go later, Sanjay, is we're in a new hybrid workforce. Some are at the office, some are not. Some you may never have even met as a leader. How do you create this powerful culture in the hybrid world? You have to be more intentional than ever before. So I hope you leave with that.
Absolutely.
So how about we end with that question? How do you preserve an amazing culture in this highly hybrid remote world? We'll end with that question.
Consistency is the key to success in everything. Be consistent in doing what you feel is right day after day, right? I mean, you may have perhaps heard that Zen saying that there was a Zen master. He would go to a well. He walked 20 miles to go to a well, get a bucket of water. He became bigger master 20 years later. He would still walk 20 miles, go to the well and get a bucket of water. So I think culture is nothing but doing the things that you believe in, you like, are right, again and again and again. So to preserve the culture, I think the best way always is to inspire your employees through your actions. They would, remote people who are working remotely, it'll take them a little longer to watch you, but eventually they will feel that, how they were treated, how they are being liked, how they're being felt secure and happy. So, and they will reciprocate. They will learn from you.
It is never a one and done. It is the consistent heartbeat of loving, caring, and valuing your employees. Yes. Well, Sanjay, thank you so much. I think you are the handsomer version of Steven Sehgal. So I will call you Sehgal, even though it's Sehgal. And I just so appreciate you. You're sharing your wisdom with many across this world, and what a blessing that is. So you're leaving quite a legacy. But on behalf of my team, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I would definitely follow you on social media, and you'll see my comments now.
Okay.
I'm active there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you. Thank you.